What is up, everyone? Welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. The most hated mythical champion is getting a buff, guys. Finally. I know a lot of you guys that pull this champion are overall extremely disappointed with his performance. We're gonna see what changes. Is this champion going to be good enough or not? One of the funny things is they tend to buff mythical champions in a batch, right? This time around, they only buffed one of them, which means that they think that every single one of the other mythicals are strong enough and probably they don't really need to buff them, which kind of like highly disagree in some cases. But either way, once again, only two champions on the list, guys. Pretty underwhelming, right? We would like to see 3, 4, 5 champions every now and then when they are doing this rebalancing. So let's start with the legendary first, then we're going to go over to the mythical champion. So we're going to get Togron, the conjoined. He's getting a buff again. Like, he got a buff not a very long time ago, maybe in the last 1 year or so, if I remember it correctly. Speed aura for all battles, you guys know what he does. But let's quickly see what he is going to do after the buff, right? So I'm quickly going to zoom in a bit on this. Before, he was just doing the buff spread with a 20% chance. Now, he will have a 70% chance of applying a buff spread effect, which is pretty nice, because if you can get a buff every time he's using the basic skill, that's amazing, right? With the books, let me just quickly see. So he has 20. Yeah, so he's going up to 50%. So with the books, he's going to have a 100% chance to spread one buff every time he's using the basic skill. That's actually really good. You use ally attack, counter attacks, this skill will activate, right? So that's going to be very nice. With the second skill, before he was healing all allies, the increased speed, the continuous heal, conditionally. Now, heals all allies, places an increased speed, also places a continuous heal buff and an immunity on all allies for 2 turns. This is a massive, massive buff. This is going to be extremely helpful for Faction Wars hard mode, and overall as a champion, he's going to be in a much, much better spot, even for other PvE content. With the third skill, he was just increasing the turn meter and giving increased accuracy, and then he was removing all the debuffs. Now, what he does is removes all the debuffs, increases the turn meter of all allies, plus an additional 2% for each debuff removed, and then he will place an increased accuracy on all allies. Truth be told, I think the buff on this champion is pretty good. There isn't much to complain of, right? It would have been nice if the block debuffs would have been together with the removes all debuffs, cleanse, and immunity, and the increased accuracy to be on the A2 instead of the block debuffs. That would have been spot on, in my opinion. That would have made the champion much better. But he is good as he is as well. Then, with a passive, increases allies' damage dealt by 10% if they currently have less HP than their target. If an ally's HP is equal to or greater than their target's, increases their max damage dealt by 20%. That's actually really, really good if you have a higher HP, but for PvE, is not really going to happen. So this is kind of like aimed more towards PvP, where I don't necessarily see myself using the champion, except the siege mode, where he can be really, really good. Then he will increase this champion's and each ally's max HP by 10% every time this champion uses an active skill, stacking up to 50%. Other than that, no changes. I think Togron is in a very, very good spot after this rebalance. So big props to Plarium for at least doing a good buff. Then, if we're going to have a look at Fjorad Wolfheart, yes, this is the most hated mythical champion in the game. I would not like to summon him. Now, one of the main issues with him is his affinity to start directly with. Spirit affinity, really off meta at the moment for damage dealers. So, starting with the very first skill, attacks an enemy twice, and he has a chance to land freeze. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted if the target champion is from the Galen pack. That's the new effect, the new addition added to the skill. And if they are under a freeze, he will repeat the attack. With the second skill, places a freeze on all enemies for 1 turn, decrease speed, and if an enemy is from the Galen Pact, places a freeze debuff on them for 2 turns, and this debuff cannot be blocked or resisted. Also decreases the target's turn meter by 30%. If the enemy is from the Galen Pact, decreases their turn meter by 50% instead, and grants an extra turn. So it seems like he really, really hates the Galen Pact, okay? He just doesn't want to deal with them. With the A3, the new version of the skill, whenever this champion or an ally receives a debuff from an enemy, has a 30% chance to place a freeze debuff on that enemy for 1 turn. This chance increases to 100%, and the debuff cannot be blocked or resisted if the target is from the Galen Pact. Okay, so once again, the same drill. They've increased his base speed from 100 to 105. And the alternate form, let's start with the A1. Attacks one enemy, will ignore 15% of the target's defense. If the target is under a freeze debuff, ignores 35% of the target's defense. So it's all about these freaking conditions. Freeze, freeze, freeze. I don't like that. I really, really do not like that. And the whole idea is that his first form is bringing the freeze, not the second one, okay? And having conditions on every single skill, I think is just a poor buff on him. But hey, maybe you guys are gonna prove me wrong. I don't have the champion. Then with the second skill, attacks all enemies, places an extra hit. You guys know the drill. Nothing really changed with this skill. The only thing that changed is that the damage multipliers increased. By how much, I have no idea. But this is an HP-based nuker, so do not get too excited. Do not have any high expectations, because based on what I've seen so far, it really just doesn't seem like he's about to get unvaulted for pretty much any of you guys. Unless those multipliers are just crazy, crazy good. With the third skill, attacks one enemy, will ignore 50% of the target's defense if the target is under a freeze debuff. Will ignore 100% of the target's defense and block damage buffs instead if they are under the freeze. Pretty good. But you need a freaking freeze, okay? Then, if the target is killed while under a freeze debuff, also places a block revive debuff on them and places a freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. The freeze debuff cannot be blocked or resisted by enemies from the Galen Pact. So if you kill somebody, you can land the freeze. Okay, that's basically how it goes. But before that, you need to have freeze in order to really maximize this skill. Doesn't seem like it's making a lot of sense, does it? The damage multipliers have been increased on this skill too. Then, with the passive, the first part is the same. Counterattacks with a Rhyme Cleave skill whenever an enemy increases the cooldown of any of these champion skills. Whenever an ally is killed, has a 50% chance of placing a freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. This chance increases to 100%. It cannot be blocked or resisted by enemies from the Galen Pact. What does it mean, blocked? Blocked means it cannot be blocked by immunity, but Stone Skin will block it. Resisted, it means that he does not require accuracy to go versus the Galen Pact champions, which he seems to really, really hate a lot. The Ogryn, the Lizardmen, the Skinwalkers, and the Orcs. It could be very helpful to help you deal with Marius. Void Affinity, you don't have to worry about Magic Affinity in a format like that, but it really depends if those damage multipliers have been increased enough in order to have a big impact on the champion's performance. That was all for this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you see yourself using the Mythical Dwarf champion? Or you think he's not really gonna do much, even after the buff? I do think that the Void Legendary, Togron, actually got a pretty nice buff. Much love, appreciate all of you guys watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.